friends. Welcome to Ed Hartman's Wild World of Music and Film, Episode 3. So, I started this podcast off doing kind of a monologue, talking about what I do and what I like as a musician, composer, and my recent adventures in producing. And I'll get more into that, I suppose, down the road. But what I want to do today... and then I had an interview with Tillman Burke, and that was really fun. So hopefully you've heard that by now. He's a fun German director, actor, producer, and he put out a really fun movie called The Midas Touch. So anyway, check out that one. But what I'm going to do today is talk about my process of composing. I thought this would be kind of fun. It's going to be a little bit of stream of consciousness sort of a thing here. And I have my keyboard set up. So I'm going to attempt to play sometimes while I talk. Maybe sometimes I'll do it later. I don't know yet. But it's a really pretty piano sound. I just love to improvise. Anyway, it gives you an idea of that. So when I'm putting together a score for a film, it's a little different than if I'm just creating a track myself. There's a whole process that starts to happen. Obviously, I got to figure out from the filmmaker what they're looking for. A lot of times they'll send me reference tracks of what they already have in there called temps. And one of the dangers of that is that the filmmakers can fall in love with those temp tracks. And it's called temp love or tempitis. It actually has terms on this. And it can be a problem because they really probably can't use that music. Maybe it's from another movie. You're not going to steal, John Williams' Star Wars music, even if you want something like it. So anyway, you wind up getting these things, and then you decide how close you want to get. Now, the downside of that is it maybe it's, you think there's something better than that. They want something that's, bluesy. And maybe you want something more for yourself as a musician. Something more funky or something. Or it could be the orchestration may be totally different. Also, it has to do with the budget of the film. I mean, what if the filmmaker wants something really poppy, but they can't afford a major pop production? And as a musician, I have kind of my limitations. There's my strengths and my weaknesses. So I have to kind of work all these things out. And hopefully you're talking to the filmmaker and getting a better idea of this all the way around, too. So anyway, I'm going to get a sense of that. And then I'm probably going to go through the film with the filmmaker. We call it spotting session. And just inch by inch on that film, look at it and make decisions on where you think music ought to be or not. So these are all kind of the technical processes. Now, I use a program called Logic on a Mac. It's relatively inexpensive. I think right now it's 2021. It's about $200. GarageBand is free with a Mac, and it's not bad. It's getting closer to Logic every day. But Logic kind of a pro thing, and I'm not up to date, to be honest. And I have additional libraries that I purchased, East-West Orchestral Library and things like that. Although the sounds that are in Logic are pretty good. And I don't want to make this a technical session of what it can do. I just want to kind of demonstrate, again, my process, more of the composing side of things. So I'm going to look through the whole movie with the filmmaker and decide, again, what's there. And again, a lot of this comes down to budget. So, I might be able to play everything virtually. I mean, I can do not just piano, but you know, I can put violin. Oops, wrong one. This one. Like that. It could be a bigger kind of violin. And that's just one section. You know, you'd have a full orchestra going. It's a little hard for me to do that as an improvisation right now. And there's other string instruments. The other one, of course, that people think about, violin. We actually have four strings. Violin, violas. They're kind of a lower part of the violin. And then there's the cellos, and they're kind of in the bass. They can be soft, or they can, again, be kind of... there's also what we call pizzicato. Something like that. And then you get down to the basses. And they can be pizzicato as well. Oops. That one's not loaded up, I guess. Well, anyway. And then there's also other kinds of bass, like acoustic bass or electric bass as well. I guess I don't have those loaded up. But I have another keyboard here that can do those. So I have a Yamaha keyboard that I set up also for playing live when I teach. And it's set up to have the bass and the piano together. Now we're ready for the jazz show. Anyway, and I'm really a percussionist, to be honest. My piano skills are not that great, but they're not bad. I mean, you know, they do pretty good. So anyway, I do like to, again, play around with all this stuff. And back to the process. You know, my feeling about film scoring is you can do ambient stuff, and I could load up a bunch of electronic sounds that this particular setup is not set up for that well. I have a different template for that. And those are endless. They can be repetitive ostinatos, where the same things over and over again, or percussive, or whatever kind of stuff you hear. Epic trailers and, you know, sci-fi movies, stuff like that. But again, this is more about lyric composition for film, which is kind of where I prefer to be honest. Although, again, I've done plenty of weird horror movies where you kind of do that. You know, one thing is an old school film scoring, old school being anything before, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, maybe even less. When you had a horror movie, I mean, this could be, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s even. You know, you might have kind of stuff like this. Oops. Oh, now we got the bass sound. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Okay, so you might have violins building. You know, like that. And that's a lot of fun to do. But anyway, the other type of writing we run into is, you know, really lyric theme writing. And again, that's my favorite thing. And it could be, you know, something on a piano. Let's see, I got to get my right piano going here. This one will work. And that's a nice little short theme. I could, you know, bring out some harmony on that. And the beauty of a nice, simple theme like that is it could be developed quite a bit throughout a film. And again, there's less development than in a symphony, by Beethoven or something like that. But if I have this melody, change the harmony. In fact, this could totally change. Wow, what a difference, right? We went to kind of new age piano for a minute there, kind of jazzy, little Keith Jarrett. So all of these are great possibilities. This is what's so fun about music is that, if you learn about improv and just kind of playing around with stuff, you can go nuts with this stuff, But then there's also groove on this sort of thing as well. So in other words, that same theme, I'll stay with that same second chord progression a little bit, and I might make it a bossa nova. Get the idea on there. It could be a jazz song. Yeah, same melody. So much can happen to it, depending on what you do with it. And as a percussionist, I'm pretty well versed in Latin and jazz and stuff like that. One of my favorite things to do is to take, a theme. Ode to Joy, and make it, classical. But also make it a calypso. Etc. Forgot it. Anyway, but it's fun to do, and I have my drum students play along with all this stuff. So you can imagine, pretty fun taking lessons, right? So, but getting back to the theme, taking that theme, creating a theme that you really like, and one thing I'm really enjoying about these interviews is as I interview filmmakers, I'm listening carefully to the themes of these films. And I'm trying to learn each one of them just so I kind of understand it, and then I can kind of follow it through the movie. A lot of times themes will follow a character. With Tillman's film, he definitely had a theme for his main character when he came back in. And this is something that's gone on for years in composition. You can go back to Wagner. He loved doing thematic writing in the Rings, the Ring cycle. He had a theme for, dozens of characters in that opera. And they're famous. I mean, if you learn them, then if you watch this opera, you can actually follow along. My favorite composer, Hector Berlioz, in Symphonie Fantastique, had a wonderful theme for the oboe, it could come on anything, and it's the artist's theme himself. And in that film, it's very piece of music. It was really what we call programmatic music, and it could have easily have been film music if films had existed at that point. So basically, composers have been writing themes for different people all the way. So in this case, getting back to what we're doing, so let's say that the main character, has kind of a dark theme. Traditionally, that's in what we call a minor chord, as opposed to a major chord. Made famous by Strauss in, if you remember, 2001, also Sprach Zarathustra. It's major, minor. So, a little bit of both. So, why the movie's so weird, anyway. One of my favorite movies of all time, though. So, we start off with a minor theme. Something like that. Again, very classical. I'm just keeping it simple here. But then you might have kind of the hero show up. And he might have kind of more of a majestic major, Again, I'm just kind of making it up a little bit. So they would contrast. And then the interesting thing as a composer is, can you put those two together in some way? I just happen to pick randomly two things. So I don't know how this is going to work. But again, here's your minor guy. Tragic. So that's an example of actually both themes coming together a little bit. So this is the artistry of composition, is being able to weave together more than one thing. Of course, this takes, oh my God, some skills, So, but that's the nature of it. You could have a dozen themes in movies. And John Williams is really the great modern variation on all this stuff. In Star Wars, and that's really a Wagnerian opera in the end. And I'm not going to try and play any of that stuff. I don't want to get busted for copyright violations here. But basically, if you listen through that music, everybody has a theme in that thing. Even Leia has a theme, and most people don't even realize it. It's so. For all I know, C-3PO has one. So I don't know. But anyway, this is kind of my process. So you have themes, and then you're going to take these themes and kind of orchestrate them. What's kind of cool about Logic, this particular program I use, it's called a DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, like GarageBand. And again, you have all these tracks you put together, individual parts, and then you mix them together. And at the end of this recording session, I'll mix this all together and make it work. And if I had time right now, I would take a theme, and then I might play it again on a variety of instruments this time. So let's see if we can't bring in like that, and then I think I can combine. Yeah, let's add a flute to that too. And then I can even add some horns. And before you know it, if I click enough of these damn buttons, let's see what happens if we just shoot the works here for a second here. I'm just kind of randomly hitting instruments. I don't know what this is going to sound like, but what the heck. Yeah, it's not quite working that well right now, because I got kind of things colliding, and then everything's in different ranges. So yeah, I may be playing the violins in one place, but they don't work against the trumpets in another or whatever. So there's issues here, but you can see this is awfully a lot of fun, and I'll edit in a few examples of much better mixes of things like this. This takes a long time to do. But anyway, what I can do in Logic, what's so cool about this is I can, if I wanted to right now, I could go back and print out the piano lick I just did. Now, I'd want to put it in time so I could read it as music, but it's actually pretty easy to print out. It has a little bit of AI and an artificial intelligence that'll kind of fix some of the notational problems and then make it readable. And so what I do a lot of is I'll improvise against the film and then print it out and then kind of go back through it and figure out what I just played, because I can't remember that much, add chords, and before you know it, I got a pretty good composition going. Now, the other thing about being able to improvise like this is I can actually put the film in. I'm not just playing, not recording music just for, with thinking about a movie. I actually put the film right in the program, and I can even change the speed of the music against it and create what we call hit points, where somebody's going to, run or stop or an explosion and build up the music so it perfectly hits right there. That's pretty incredible if you think about that concept. So these are all really neat tricks, and that allows me to come up with something that's pretty dynamic against the score. Now, once I get that kind of overall piano part, then again I might go back and add all those orchestral instruments and build them up. And a great example of kind of where I'm at for film scoring is this 1938 film I scored and produced. I didn't direct it. I'm not that old. But it's called As the Earth Turns. And if you just Google that thing, there is a 1934 movie called As the Earth Turns. It's not the same thing. This was by Richard Lyford. Anyway, the process I used was just like this. I took it, cut it down to about 25 scenes, and then scored each one, and then created kind of relationships between, things like that. And that film has a score that's largely period orchestral, kind of like what I'm doing right now, and then a little bit of old style jazz in there too. So now thinking about style for a second here, let's go into that. What's neat about style? Let's see. I got my piano there. Different eras in film especially have style. Like one of my favorites, I've done film noir, and this is my film noir chord. So that kind of it's a minor chord, but there's certain aspects of it that are definitely film noir, and that's very different. If I was doing, thinking about this, if I was doing, church music, I might want an organ sound. Oops, that's not it. What I'm looking for here. Have I got my organ going? Maybe I don't. Oops, not set up yet. But anyway, these are all possibilities. Oh, my other keyboard has organ. Here we go. Let's see here. Etc. down there, and I've done scores like that for that needed church music as well. So anything's possible, and again, as a composer, you have to be a little bit into an eclectic concept here as well. Horror movies, like that suspense stuff. One thing interesting about acoustics that I've noticed is that low if you think about the voice, like I'm a little bit of a baritone, so I'm a little bit low, but the voice of a human is from here to about here, whatever, on a keyboard. If I get rid of the bass for a second, the piano goes way down low, but the voice, I'm bound to be about there, up to there, and then I get falsetto, whatever. But anyway, that's kind of a certain frequency range, and animals that are, much lower. I think the Jaws theme. works is it's, low, and we think of big animals. So, if you want to be scary, then, you take... You get to low-pitched instruments. That's why drones in sci-fi scores is so effective. You get really low and subaudibles. You can actually freak people out because mentally the brain can't handle some of that stuff. Anyway, and then if you think about it, the predators around us in nature would be down here in the low big animals like, whales and... I don't know about whales, but bears and, stuff like that. And then the high stuff up here, this would be like creepy crawly stuff, and bees and stuff like that. And I think to this day, that's one reason why extremes are so scary. When we're in a theater, we hear those high pitches and those super low pitches. It can actually freak us out pretty good because it's basically flight or fight. You want to move. So stuff in the middle is like, okay, those are fine. Those are things that are not going to kill us, right? And in our hearing range is 20 to 20,000 cycles per second. Look on a headset of headphones, that's kind of what it's at. You start getting below that or way up that, and again, funny things happen psychologically. So these are all tricks of scoring and composing that you learn. And if you think about acoustics and physics, you actually get kind of a cool concept on this. I think I'll do a show about the acoustics of sound. I really love teaching that. So that would be great for this. I actually was going to do a radio program years ago about it. So now's my chance. What the heck? So anyway, these are all examples of ways I think about scoring and putting music against picture. And I do write music on my own away from picture, especially pitching to TV and film when they want certain styles, but they don't necessarily want somebody to synchronize it against, some action or something like that. But that's another story. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode. Music licensing is what that's all about. Now, the pacing of things, rhythm plays a big key. So if I'm, creating music that has kind of a certain tempo to it, all of a sudden I have a kind of drive going on. Up to now, I've been thinking lyrically, but now I'm thinking more building. Being a percussionist, again, so I have a good sense of this. I can do lots of things. Imagine this being totally orchestrated out. Is that theme popping up? Same theme moved around. Again, same theme. More building rhythm. Now, one thing about score is it can't necessarily be in your face if there's dialogue going on. Right now, I'm playing against me talking. In a movie, you want to be focused on the dialogue generally, so we'll dial that down volume-wise. It might be playing, but it might be much more in the distance. And you could even dodge the dialogue where if I'm talking and then I stop, and then I start again, and then keep going back and forth, talking, not talking. Anyway, that's dodging the dialogue, literally. And that happens. In fact, I've heard recently, I heard kind of a concept that there's a speed of rhythm in dialogue. I'd never really thought about this, but if I'm talking kind of like this, maybe my music might kind of come out a little bit like this, and it won't get in the way of it. Who knows? I don't know. Or if I'm really talking fast, maybe all of a sudden my music picks up. On the other hand, if I have, the other thing I got to watch out for is my voice is in maybe this here, so I want to stay away from that. So maybe I'll either put high pitches against my voice or lower down here. And that's where the cellos tend to come in handy for, let's see if I can get that cello back here. So so right now this is kind of not too intrusive, although it's fairly expressive. I want to back off. That's kind of a solo cello here. Let's see. There's more of kind of a mellower cello. I got the piano going too. I don't know if I can kill that. I think that's kind of stuck on right now. Yeah. So again, and right now we're not mixing to all of this, and I don't really want to go back and try and mix this all against my dialogue, but that's what has to happen. And so, you wind up with kind of working on scenes that have a beginning, a middle, end of each scene, and they may have kind of an arc to them, or they may have a hit point, or something like that. Maybe it's more ambient. Maybe the score at this point needs to be, not too active. There's a lot of music for film that might just be just a gentle. Oh, let's try this again here. Might be just kind of stuff like this. There's a lot of intimate piano happening, really close mic'd. And that just, and that can go against almost anything. It's we call it ambient because it really doesn't move anywhere. It can be really pretty. And there's something to be said for harmony. Like if I create a major chord, I have kind of a resolution. Traditionally, that kind of suggests, hey, we're done, man, everything's good. But in minor, again, makes it, well, maybe it didn't come out so well, and then what we call diminished. I'm not sure, man, I don't know what's going on. But then I can have kind of minors with alternative notes. Whoa, where's this going? Oh, my God. And then... oh, yeah, lush. Woo. And again, I can have certain chords that are more older style. And then more modernistic stuff like that can be different, or I can put chords on top of chords. Stuff like that. Almost at this point in music, you can almost stack anything. All that's quite acceptable in musical traditions to this day. So these are all again, tricks of composers that they can do this, and people think we're, geniuses at this. No, we're just keeping our ears open and paying attention and seeing what people have done and redoing it. Just like talking, you just listen to other people and figure it out on there. So all the aspects of music really kind of play against the scene. The pacing has to do with rhythm a lot of the time. The chord development tends to be the emotional, happy, sad kind of a thing. The melodies tend to encourage specific characters in there. Really, melody, harmony, and rhythm are kind of what music is all based on as well. So these are hopefully, ways if you watch a movie, you can have a little more appreciation on what's going on. I'm trying to think what else I missed on this whole thing. There's tons, and I would encourage you to listen to great scores. On my website, Ed Hartman Music, if you go to the links, there's Ed's favorite movie list. Check that out. And a lot of that is movies about musicians, biographies, but they can also be movies that have great music in them, like 2001 or something like that. So, if you want to get an idea where I'm coming from, those are kind of films like that. I really love scores that have lush music scores. I think I was saying this on the first broadcast that, It's Mad, 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 Mad World has this incredible earworm that just keep da-da-da-da-da-da. Again, I don't want to sing too much of it, but man, and what's fun about that movie is if you watch it in the theater, and I've seen it in the theater in a 70 millimeter Cinerama theater in Seattle, it has an introduction to it, kind of a, what do they call that? Well, prelude before the movie, and then it has the movie goes on. Then there's an interlude, and there's an intermission music, entr'acte to the last section, and then there's an exit music. Man, that's movies. That movies are maybe 2.5 hours. If you add all that music, it's almost a 3-hour experience, and that's what movies I think need to be in theaters. These big, massive events, where you just feel like, wow, I'm experiencing something with a whole bunch of people. Yeah, for anybody that hasn't been in a real theater in a while, I'm just reminding you, there's a big screen, and you're with a bunch of people, and you're watching this thing, and people actually experience together. I just remind you of that. So whenever this thing is over, go back to the movies and check them out. Keep those guys alive because, man, TV's fun. Yeah, it's kind of cool. You got a big screen, but it ain't the same, man. It ain't. And unless you have massive studio speaker systems, you're not going to get that same kind of frequency thing that I'm talking about because that's what you need, those subwoofers and, massive stuff. Go to IMAX movies. You get this in spades, man. So anyway, those are all examples pretty much of how I score. And again, very briefly, just some simple ideas here. And then the other thing is you got to take all this stuff and mix it down. That's not easy. And we're all supposed to now be, composer geniuses, mixing masters, engineers. And these are all things that historically other people did all this stuff. There's what we call hummers in Hollywood to this day that maybe come up with a melody. And then somebody else, flushes that out to chords and somebody else, or to the most, in fact, with most modern movies, the composer doesn't necessarily orchestrate all this stuff. They may have a hand in it, but there's people that are geniuses at that alone. And they'll take, your music and really make it big. So for me, what is so fun about being able to do it all yourself is to challenge yourself and see how big of a score can I come into with on my own without all that help on there. You look at the music department on a major film, there's hundreds of people involved. And yet, basically for the score I did for As the Earth Turns, it was me, and an engineer at a wonderful post studio, Clarendon in Seattle. It's now called something else. I can't remember. But not a lot of people involved, and yet we have something that's on Amazon right now. It's going to be on Turner Classic Movies. That's astounding. And honestly, I don't think I could have done any of this until fairly recently. In other words, technology is right on the cusp for me of being able to pull stuff off. Even podcasts, I don't think I could have done this stuff a year ago. In fact, pandemic has helped me in some way in that I understand Zoom and I can do interviews. I've been on lots of interviews. There's so many things that, we can look at the downside of all this stuff fairly quickly. But man, if you think about the technology we're going to pick up on all this stuff, embrace it, use it, because there's a lot you can get from this as this thing wraps up. And I think it really will in the next 6 months. So I think I'll leave this one for now, and maybe we'll return to these ideas. If you have ideas for future podcasts for me to do about composition, orchestration, whatever that is, please let me know. And really, my initial goal was to talk to filmmakers on this, and I'm going to try and pull out what their concepts are about film music as well. As much as I'd like to learn about their movies, I'm really especially interested in the soundtrack side of things myself. So that's it. Speaking of soundtracks, you can buy my soundtrack for As the Earth Turns. It is available on iTunes and all that stuff, so through CD Baby. So anyway, thank you guys very much. And let's kind of put you to sleep here. A little bit of new agey kind of stuff. So again, thank you very much for having me. Maybe a little flamenco. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.